Hello, and welcome audience. We are going to explain the thriller movie Don't Worry Darling. It did well at the box office. That is one of the successes, that the movie plot is a bit mysterious. To get more like this, kindly subscribe to the channel and give it a like if you enjoy. Your subscription is our inspiration. The film begins with Bunny and her husband Dean throwing a house party. Among those present are our protagonist Alice and her husband Jack, as well as other neighbors who appear to be extremely close. While the guys continue to chat about how fortunate they are to be a member of the Victory Project, the women appear to engage in internal gossip or play drinking games. Soon after, Alice and Jack go for a fun driving session before returning to their beautiful ideal home for some steamy sex. The next morning, we see Alice prepare breakfast for him while Jack gets ready and leaves for work at the same time as the other men. As the spouses bid them farewell, they all get into their separate cars and back out of their driveways. The wives then go through a routine that includes cleaning every speck of dust in the house, cooking a 3-course lavish meal for their husbands, and preparing to serve them the best return to home from work present, in the form of a glass of scotch and their bodies to be devoured. The routine is occasionally interrupted by a trip to the community house, which has an added swimming pool, the shopping mall, where live ladies are on show with a dress, and a dance lesson that is led and observed by Shelley. She is a stern woman who appears to be hell-bent on maintaining the overall rhythm and routine of the town to the letter, sort of carrying forth the rules and regulations set by her husband, the founder of this utopia, Frank. Victory Town is surrounded by desert, with Utopia serving as a haven in the middle. It appears that only affluent people live there, and there is no hierarchy that distinguishes the inhabitants. However, there is only one hierarchy, and it is based on whatever ideals Frank's about transforming the world are fed to them. His ramblings are disguised as loudspeaker announcements, and everyone in town is following along as if it were coming directly from the mouth of a cult leader. The women are meant to be quite tired of their own homes and lives, and not question what their husbands do for a profession or try to find out what happens beyond the Victory Project headquarters. They are simply told that their husbands are involved in the creation of advanced material, which, given the 1950s, could be the development of nuclear weapons or worse, something genuinely ludicrous that would be exposed later. However, a significant change in pace is on the way. The regulated bubble of this utopia is triggered for the first time when Frank prepares a party to welcome the newest members of the society, Bill and Violet. Everyone is present, and everyone, as usual, appears to be in awe of what Frank is doing with Victory Town. They all greet him as if he were a messiah, and he begins lecturing them about control and chaos, and how the invisible forces that prevent anarchy are making things work for them in town. However, before he can go any farther, one of the ladies, Margaret, who is plainly frightened and troubled, musters the confidence to pose the question that they have all been dreading. What are we doing here? Her inquiry should serve as a warning to everyone around her, yet everyone, even her own husband, acts as if her words are falling on deaf ears. He leads her away from the celebration, and Alice walks into Frank's house, where she observes Margaret's husband attempting to force-feed her some drugs prescribed by town doctor Dr. Collins. She is upset and concerned about the town's whereabouts, and Alice appears to have empathy for her for a brief moment. Anyway, Jack and Alice have another session of coitus, this time inside Frank's house, with Frank creepily watching them while Jack goes down on her. When Alice returns home, they briefly discuss Margaret, but Jack shuts her down by saying she has lost her marbles because she disobeyed Frank's one rule and went beyond the boundaries. We also learn via flashbacks that Margaret lost her son in the desert, and that the tragedy has left her permanently disfigured. This one incident, though, sets something in action within Alice as well. The first indicators of discomfort occur when she has hallucinations in which she sees pictures of ladies performing some sort of dance routine. These hallucinations are frequently dark and are accompanied by a loss of time for her. The next day, something strange occurs. While cooking supper, Alice discovers that the eggs are utterly empty on the inside. Is this a clear metaphor for her empty life in Victory? But I'll get to that later. When she is cleaning the house, the wall appears to close in on her, as if she is being crushed. She, too, can't breathe when the illusion breaks, but she chooses to take a strand out of the house to get some fresh air and a change from her routine. When the driver questions her commute on the town's lorry, she decides just to sit inside because it's like a day off for her and she thinks going to and fro on a lorry will do her good. However, as she nears the end of the line, she notices a red jet lose its balance over the desert skyline. She follows the guidelines for a bit before realizing the plane has crashed in a remote no-land. Mans. She requests that the lorry driver transport her near the crash site, but the driver completely freezes and informs her that he is not permitted to do so. Angry and anxious, Alice climbs down and attempts to track the path she believes the crashing plane must have taken before arriving near the headquarters. Surprisingly, she does not come across the plane or any other wreckage as she goes through the desert to the headquarters front entrance. In an attempt to receive aid, Alice aligns her face to the headquarters glass opening, and the next thing we know, she's back at home, waking up from a nightmare with images identical to her hallucinations. She doesn't tell Jack that she overstepped her boundaries and blurs the episode within herself. The waking nightmares, however, continue to worsen. She once observes a completely fucked out of her mind Margaret on the top of her house and, although feeling compelled to act, avoids the entire scenario for Bunny's perusal. However, her dreams worsen, and on one of her days at ballet class, she spots a crack in the mirrors, only to find that she is utterly out of her mind after getting lost midway through rehearsal. This is a vision of Margaret in the mirror and the images worry her, prompting her to from the classroom and go to Margaret's house. However, before Alice can reach her, Margaret has slit her throat and falls from her terrace. Attempting to contact Alice for assistance, a group of men dressed in red cut her off, and before she could revolt, she passes out again, waking up in her house with Jack and Dr. Collins. The doctor tells Alice and Jack about what happened to Alice. Her thoughts about Margaret slashing her throat are entirely dismissed by the two of them. They believe it is one of Alice's many delusions that she has been experiencing recently. Dr. Collins provides some medicines for her to take, assuring her that Margaret is okay and that she and her husband have simply moved out of town. Alice is convinced that Margaret has injured herself, but when Dr. Collins informs her that Margaret and her emotions have cost her husband his position at the Victory Project, she remains silent for the sake of Jack. Alice discovers a file with Margaret's name on it while speaking with the doctor. When Collins forgets his bag, Alice snatches the paperwork before Collins returns to recover it. Later, she gains access to the top-secret file, but because most of it has been blacked out, the only thing she can make out is Margaret's failing mental state, and no one at Victory giving a damn about it. Alice ensures that she is a dutiful wife to her husband, so when he asks her to put on her nicest outfit and attend one of Frank's important events, she gladly accepts, despite not feeling 100%. For the first time, Alice appears to have a vision of herself in a different life during the event. She realizes that she and Jack are living quite different lives, and the only visible interaction she can see is when she promises him she would work more hours to compensate for his lost job. Is this a scene from their life before Victory? It's not entirely apparent, but the vision really bothers her. She begs Jack to take her back home, visibly anxious and in the middle of one of Frank's big revelations. Jack, who is greatly taken aback by Frank's news, dismisses her request by telling her to cool down. In response, Frank says that Jack has been promoted and will now be working with the seniors. While he awards Jack with a ring for his achievements, Alice is losing it and rushes into the facilities to calm herself. Frank asks Jack to dance on stage, and he does so like a puppet. It almost feels like a clear parallel for how all the strings in Victory are linked to Frank's hands, and he is simply puppeteering them all the way through. Meanwhile, Bunny arrives at the facilities and, rather than attempting to assist her, attempts to reason with her. She encourages her to calm down and support her husband on his special night. Amazed by that reaction, Alice resolves to keep it to herself until she is confronted and gaslighted by Frank the next day at the dinner prepared to celebrate Jack's promotion at their home. Alice seemed to be fed up with Victory Town's quest for perfection during the supper. After being coaxed by Frank about her outburst, she turns her back on the town's domineering attitude and decides to take center stage. She sits down with Frank and begins to ask all the questions that the women of the village are not meant to ask. She also notices a few strange parallels between how they all ended there in Victory and how their lives before it was a complete blur. Shelley ultimately urges Alice to stop talking and tells her to quit disparaging her husband, who has built something great for them. While everyone else in the party has their reservations, they all believe everything Alice says is a hysterical burst out. When everyone has left, Alice, having damaged Jack's reputation in front of everyone, informs him that something is seriously wrong with Victory Town and that they should leave immediately. Jack, who is saddened by the change of events, agrees to whatever Alice says as he implores her to love her till the end. Don't worry, darling concludes with Alice's first meaningful step toward freedom. As Alice packs her belongings and gets into the car with Jack behind the wheel, their escape is halted short by the same men in red that were deployed to defuse supposedly insane Margaret. Alice is then shown having shock therapy. The causes for this have not yet been revealed, but these electroshocks are inextricably linked to the truth of who she is. We learn about Alice and her husband Jack, who live in a little apartment. It's the 20th century, not in the 1950s, and Alice works late-night hours at the hospital on top of her own because Jack has lost his job. Alice doesn't have time or energy to be affectionate toward Jack, because she is utterly weary from her job. This is why Jack, who has nothing important to do, is having difficulty connecting with her. One of the issues is that her job schedule is causing a schism between them. Jack's lack of employment has led him to religiously watch the preaching videos of a man named Frank. Frank is someone who has created a technology that allows couples to live in an enormously evolved virtual reality, a replica of a 1950s utopia that screams perfection from the start. While it is never fully explained or seen, one may conclude that Jack, who has lost all feelings of control owing to his fragile male ego, must have taken the initiative to coerce Alice into this experiment. For a split second, we witness Alice force plugged into the simulation's ground control, that is their bed, while Jack also enters it, strapped to the program's unit and sleeping beside her. In a montage that then reveals more specifics about the simulation, we learn that the entire thing does not have Alice's permission. It is something Jack determines on his own to get some influence over what Alice does. In the simulation, Jack opts for British identity, and because there is no other option, Alice's whole memory is erased before she enters Victory as a citizen. We also find later that all of the men in Victory voluntarily enrolled in to be a part of Victory Town, while their spouses, the women, were taken captive against their wills and uploaded into the simulation. Now, as the montage concludes, we find Alice, presumably fully depleted from her recent escape efforts, returning to her gorgeous house. However, the simulation and deception do not appear to last long this time, as she is triggered into reality as soon as she hears the music she keeps humming throughout the film. Everything flashes before her eyes, and she knows that Jack has been the perpetrator all along. She then hits him over the head with a glass before fleeing the house. When she leaves the house, she surprises everyone by telling them that they are being controlled by Frank's program and that they must break free. This is when we find that only Bunny is aware of the reality behind Victory and that she agreed to join up for it because her children perished in the real world and she gets to spend all of her time with them in Victory Town. She, on the other hand, encourages Alice to flee and break the program's hold on her. She also notes that if killing the men in the simulation implies killing them in real life, the only way she will live is to flee. Dean tries to stop Alice, but she gets in her car and speeds away towards the key to Victory, the headquarters. On her route, she is intercepted by Frank's henchmen, the cleaning crew clothed in red, who attempt to capture or maybe kill Alice, thereby preventing her real-life body from ever waking up. As Frank overhears every update over the radio, an entire set piece is dedicated to Alice driving Jack's automobile into the desert and sort of combating Victory's inherent chauvinism. This is when Frank's wife Shelley, who has been listening in on all of the updates, decides to take a bold step. Just as Frank is ready to leave Alice alone, she takes a kitchen knife and plunges it into his heart, killing him. Before she does so, she states, "It's my turn now," indicating a change that will be discussed further below. Meanwhile, Alice, who has been fighting all of the soldiers in red, runs the final leg of her escape. Just as she is about to approach the headquarters window, she has one of her visions in which she sees Jack urging her to stay in Victory and be with him. However, now that she is free of control and has formed her own conscience, Alice chooses to take the risk and touches the glass of the headquarters window. For a split second, the screen goes black, and we hear a lady gasping for oxygen, indicating that Alice has teleported back to reality.
If you enjoyed the explanation, it is of utmost request to subscribe to the channel and give a like. Your subscription is our inspiration. Hope to see you in the next videos. Thank you.